Right, this is a review of standoff lettering workflow. It involves a couple of techniques which will hopefully speed the process up for you. We've started out with a document. Our layering is our design layer, a cut, washout and template layers. We've got two spot colours set up, cut and washout. Get the naming protocol of that right. It's helpful to have the attributes palette open as well. First thing I'm going to do is select the design, hold down the Alt key and copy it up to the cut layer. I'm going to turn off the design now, we won't be going back to that. The cut layer, we need to specify as a stroke, that is cut, set to overprint. That's the cut layer done. Now we need to look at the washouts. For a medium standoff, which is a 16mm head, we need a 17mm diameter washout. So create a circle that's 17mm and specify the stroke to washout as overprint. Now we're going to put a few guide in that's going to help us position. So from the centre of the circle, hold down the Alt key and click and put in a 50mm diameter circle. Then select the inner circle, select the fill and add an arbitrary colour. This just makes it easier to select the symbol that we're about to create. Select all that, go to symbols, add a symbol, name it if you want, washout, not wash want. Ooh, washout, there we are. Right, now we've got that as a symbol. Yeah, that's all okay. What we can do is we can select the symbol and move it. The reason we added the fill is if you click on a no fill area, you don't actually pick the symbol up. So, right, the reason for the outer circle is that allows us to get visually, roughly in the centre of the strokes really quick without having to measure anything. So again, it's just a bit of a labour save. I've got smart guides turned on. Sometimes I turn it off because it's one of those things that can be a bit of a pain. When you've got letters like E's, C's, O's, N's, U's, where you might be tempted to put the square, I know we wouldn't do that because it doesn't quite work, but don't put washouts in a square. The problem with doing that, or in a rectangle, the problem with doing that is that letter could now be stuck on upside down. And sometimes, yeah, fitters, if you don't give a fit guide with it, or if the fitter's in a rush, or if somebody on site thinks they're funny, they can sort of mess the letters around. So in this case, what I would do with these, I tend to put a point to support that corner. With placements, you're looking at best, you want a tripod of points, you want 3 points to form a triangle. Usually with letters, you're going to end up with 4 points like that. And again, because we've avoided symmetry within our point placement, that letter can only go on in one place. If you have common letters, so if you have, let's say we have another E in our word, what we want to do is we don't want to place the washouts on the second E. We want to copy that letter, or just that letter, not every letter, everything. We want to copy just that letter and make sure all of the E's use the same standoff positioning. It's just easier on site because you don't have to say this is the first letter E, this is the second, and so on and so on. Right, I's are problematic. The problem with an I is they wobble. So we can put in our foot, we can only get 1 point on the I, that's pretty much what it is. If we just put 2 standoffs on that I, and this is a high gloss acrylic, let's say this is a high gloss acrylic, we can't guarantee that that's going to go flat on the wall. So what we have to do is, if I can get it, yeah, put a third point in and just offset it. So they form a very shallow triangle. That'll just force the eye not to rock. It's a bit of a judgment call, but I prefer to do it when I can. T's are relatively easy. Again, with a T, I usually go for triangulation, just 3 points. what you're basically looking for is there anywhere I can lean on the letter that would force it to bow or snap. So if we, for instance, if we look at the H, stick a point here because it's kind of the furthest point away, and then I wouldn't put a point there because then this will have no structure underneath it. So just put one up there. If it was a really large letter, I might decide to put another standoff in the middle of the H, and I might put another standoff. In fact, I think I will. I'll put another supportive there. But that's kind of arbitrary decisions depending on the size of the lettering. Right, now we need to get rid of all the construction data. Because this is a symbol, we can double click on any one. Yes. Never seen that warning before. Right, we can delete the outside circle. We can then go in and set our fill to none. And when we come out of the washout, you can see they've all now been specified just as discs. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make our template. So select everything on the washout layer, hold down the Alt key, and drag all those symbols up to the template. This will make a duplicate of all the washout positioning on the template layer. Turn off all the other layers, so we're only working on the template layer. Select our symbol and duplicate it. So we now have two symbols. On the second symbol, double click on it, zoom in if required, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw a cut across, snap into the top and bottom of the circles, swatch, set it to black, go to rotate round the centre. There we have a cross. Now I'm going to delete the outer circle, so now we have a symbol which is just a cross, but it has not replaced it because all of those, if we select the black arrow tool, all of those are still referring back to the original symbol. Select the new symbol and replace symbol, and there it's converted en masse. All of these are now the cross symbol. When you've got a lot of washouts, that saves you quite a bit of time. Right, now we need to look at putting the perimeter path on. So I'm going to turn the design on. I'm going to select the design, go to Objects, all the way down to Artboards, and I'm going to fit to selected art. This has made the page the same size as the design. So we know on our template that if we were to produce something that big, it would be the same size as the lettering. What I normally do at this point is set up a 25mm bleed. Then on my template layer, I create a box. Oh, I need to activate the layer. That is the size of the bleed. And then I specify that to be swatch, cut, overprint. Then I go back to Object Menu, back to Artboards, back to Fit to Selected Art. This makes the artboard 25mm bigger than the logo, which again is going to help the fitters centralise on the wall. I now set the bleed down to 3mm. Right, other things I do, I put a line in at the top that is specified as a cut. I take that line, making sure that I'm aligned to artboard, I centre it on the artboard. That gives us a midpoint of the template. So if they've got to centralise something on the wall, they can just measure to that point. I usually, I have a font set up for this, which you'll find on the server. So type up, or top will do. It's called Studio Guide. Don't have to do this bit, I just tend to do it out of habit. Set the tracking up to 50 because we're going to cut it. It looks a bit weird, but if we outline the text, select the white arrow tool and select all those markers at the top and delete them, select the whole thing, reverse it, and set that to cut. Scale it down. That will single line now cut on the cutter to at least show us where the top of the stand is. That might be a bit tight on the spacing. In the pit stop assets folder, there is a file called up. It pretty much does the same thing, and it just puts a symbol on the, if you drag that out and paste it on, it puts a symbol on the template, but I don't have that at home, so you're getting it that way. So there's the template layer, there's the washout layer, and there's the cut layer. So this is the design page. I then go into artboard management by pressing Shift O, hold down the Alt key and duplicate that artboard out twice. So page 1 is going to be my construction page. That's everything all together. Page 2 is going to be my cut file. Page 3 is going to be my template. So we'll work with page 3 first. We'll turn off the template. Let's turn the design on. I'm going to delete everything that's not the template. Right. You have to do this black arrow, otherwise it doesn't delete the symbols. So now on that layer, the only thing we now have on that layer is the template. On this page, page 2, I'm going to turn off cut and wash. So I'm going to delete the design and the template. So we now have our production page and we now have our template page. The last thing to do is if we zoom in and if we select, let's just isolate out the cut information by alt clicking on the lock symbol. Now I can select purely the text, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to set the stroke to 10 millimeters. This is all about optimization now on the sheet. So if I turn the washout on, right, that's grouped, so we need to ungroup the letters, because now what we want to do, and for this I usually turn smart guides off. I'm now just putting the letters, just nesting them for efficiency, because usually these are on things like acrylic, and acrylic, I can't unmove that. As you can see, sometimes clicking on lines can be a bit of a faff. There we go. Yeah, like I said, acrylic's expensive, or if it's like brushed ACM, you know, we don't keep it in stock. So if you use all your sheet and a letter gets messed up, you've got no more material. So we nest as possible, nest as small as possible. Once that's done, we can set that back to 1 point, and that gives us a 10mm spacing between each of the elements by getting these paths almost to touch, or in that case to touch. We know we're maintaining a 10mm guttering between the items, which means they won't have any problems cutting it on the Kongsberg. Select all that, and once again, object, artboards, fit to selected art. If you're cutting on acrylic, these letters for efficiency could be rotated, so the eye could be rotated through 90 degrees. If you're cutting on brushed ACM, the flute direction is important, so you have to keep all the letters regularly spaced. That is basically our design, our optimized cut, and our template. Save each of those pages out as a separate PDF, produce a contact sheet, get it downstairs. And that is Standoff Lettering.